beginning at verse 1. 2 Kings, chapter 5, beginning at verse 1. And we're going to read to verse 19. 2 Kings 5, verse 1. And Naaman, captain of the host of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master, and honourable, because by him the Lord had given deliverance unto Syria. He was also a mighty man in valour, but he was a leper. And the Syrians had gone out by companies, and had brought away captive out of the land of Israel a little maid, and she waited on Naaman's wife. And she said unto her mistress, Would God my Lord were with the prophet that is in Samaria, for he would recover him of his leprosy. And one went in and told his Lord, saying, Thus and thus saith the maid that is of the land of Israel. And the king of Syria said, Go, and I will send a letter unto the king of Israel. And he departed and took with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 pieces of gold, and 10 changes of raiment. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, saying, Now, when this letter is come unto thee, behold, I have therewith sent Naaman my servant to thee, that thou mayest recover him of his leprosy. And it came to pass, when the king of Israel read the letter, that he rent his clothes, and said, Am I God to kill and to make alive, that this man doth send unto me to recover a man of his leprosy? Wherefore consider, I pray, and see how he seeketh a quarrel against me. And it was so, when Elisha the man of God had heard that the king of Israel had rent his clothes, that he sent to the king, saying, Wherefore hast thou rent thy clothes? Let him come now to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel. So Naaman came with his horses and with his chariot, and stood at the door of the house of Elisha. And Elisha sent a messenger unto him, saying, Go and wash in Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. But Naaman was wroth, and went away and said, Behold, I thought he would surely come out to me, and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and strike his hand over the place, and recover the leper. Are not Abana and Pharpar, rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? May I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. And his servants came near and spake unto him, and said, My father, if the prophet had bid thee do some great thing, wouldest thou not have done it? How much rather then, when he saith unto thee, Wash and be clean? Then went he down and dipped himself 7 times in Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God. And his flesh came again like unto the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. And he returned to the man of God, he and all his company, and came and stood before him. And he said, Behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee, take a blessing of thy servant. But he said, As the Lord liveth, before whom I stand, I will receive none. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. And Naaman said, Shall there not then, I pray thee, be given to thy servant 2 mules burdened of the earth? For thy servant will henceforth offer neither burnt offering, nor sacrifice unto other gods, but unto the Lord. In this thing the Lord pardon thy servant, that when my master goeth into the house of Rimmon to worship there, and he leaneth on my hand, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon, when I bow down myself in the house of Rimmon, the Lord pardon thy servant in this thing. And he said unto him, Go in peace. So he departed from him a little way.
Let's put it on. 2 Kings chapter 5 then. So I thought it'd just be nice just to look. Obedience better than sacrifice. You could put in there in brackets, oh what a struggle. Oh what a struggle. We have this story of the man Naaman, and this little girl that's mentioned in there, and then we have the account of Elisha, the great prophet that replaced Elijah, that did so well. And was able to see the hand of God coming upon this man. Verse 1 tells us that Naaman was the commander of the army of the king of Syria. A great man, an honourable man in the eyes of the king. A brave man, a valiant man. And by him, the Lord had given many victories to the people of Israel, to the people of Syria. But he was a leper. He had all these, his character, it seems, is unblemished until we see pressure being applied and then some traits come out that we're not aware of in that first verse. Look at some of the things. He's highly esteemed. He's well accepted in high society and in company. His servants talk to him, my father, my father. They look upon him as someone that can be trusted, someone that can be a confidant in that type of thing. He was a man that was highly successful in his field of work. He was someone that was very, very successful. He was a man that was so very, very brave. The strange thing is, with all these qualities, he was completely unaware that God was involved with him. We can be like that sometimes in life. That can be our portion sometimes. We see things going so very, very well. Everything we seem to touch. I remember old Graham Reese talking once of his concern between Peter, between Nick and between Tim. I remember him saying this was before he passed away. He said he was so concerned because whatever Nick seems to touch turns to gold. But whatever Tim used to try and get involved with always seemed to come down to the earth. Never seemed to move out. And so we find with this man, we find that he's completely unaware of God working in his life. You see, you tend to think that God only works in your life when you're a Christian. But he's involved in your life well before those days. Paul says, God separated me from my mother's womb and called me by his grace. John Wesley looked back when he was an older man, looking back to when he was 6 years of age and saved from a house fire, and said that he was a brand plucked from the fire. And so we find that God is able to work in our lives way before we're ever converted. He is oblivious to the care of God. All he is conscious of is that he's so very, very successful in whatever he does and so respected. But then it says this about him, but he was a leper. He was a leper. I don't think we appreciate the mindset that would have brought to the individual. If at the end of the 20th century you were told, not before the end of the century, but certainly in the 80s and 90s, if you were told that you had AIDS, it would have that mindset on you. Because at that time, before they poured the billions into it and science did its work to bring forth drugs that would help people that were suffering from this, it was incurable. No matter how rich you were, no matter how wealthy you were, no matter what private insurance you might have had, it was incurable. And they could not sustain. We find it also perhaps in the generations before that is still affecting us today. We heard in former days of cancer. We heard of it today. But the success rate among some is there to be seen. But going back a generation or so, we find that cancer was a theme that hung over many a family, and there was no escape from it. We find also, in this age, some of you have gone through it. I saw it with my mother. I've seen it with my mother-in-law. You've seen it with your wives. You've seen it with your husbands. And this dementia that has come. And this talk of progress being made in certain fields. It's years down the road yet. But it still has that mindset, doesn't it? It has that mindset. There's no way out of this. And for this man, that's the mindset he would have had. He was a leper. We don't know how far it had spread. We don't know the impact that it had on him physically. But it was something that was visible. It had to be visible for someone to see it. and for him to be concluded as a leper. Perhaps it was on his hand, perhaps it was on his forearm and it was covered up, perhaps it was on another area. Normally on the extremities is where it would normally be found initially, and certainly the extremities it affects. We remember in former days John McGuinness coming from Elim Missions out there, I think it was in British Guiana, and then he would come and tell us about the success of God working amongst the leper colonies. And he told of a day when they had to cross the river with the cattle, and they sent an old sickly old cow through, or an old sickly old bull through into the river, that the piranha could attack them first. And then those with the leprosy went through with the cattle themselves to cross the other side of the river. Talked of days when he would take up men and women and children in his arms with weeping sores, and hold them in, take them down into the waters of the river and baptize them in the name of the Lord Jesus. But the mindset of this man would have been that he would, if I was to say to you, what's the most important factor in your life for the future, what is it? I don't mean beyond the grave. Your answer 99.9% of the time would be this: my health. In the announcement I made this morning, God willing and health permitting. Because we don't know about health. We know perhaps a little bit about wealth, but we don't know about health itself. This man had everything running for him, but he was a sick man with no way out from it. Now, as part of his duties, he would lead out raids or command raids into foreign lands. And in this occasion, a raid went out into northern Israel. The Bible calls it Samaria, but we'll call it northern Israel just to make sure that everybody understands where it was going into. And part of the captives that came back from there was a young girl. Now, he had everything. She had nothing. She doesn't even have a name. We don't even know what her name is. She's without father, she's without mother, she's without a home. She's without bitterness, but she's not without faith. Last week we talked of David, a young man, a teenager, no doubt, when he faced Goliath. We heard of how God worked in his life with the witness that he bore that affected the whole of the nation, that affected the nations all around. A young lad, a teenager, someone like Joseph's age, or maybe just a little bit younger, maybe just a little bit older, whatever it was. This is a young girl, maybe younger than Naomi, maybe someone around Grace's age, but she's been touched by God. We've heard of young people getting converted young, haven't we? We've heard about that. We've heard of the witness that they had. You heard about Phil Wright getting converted as a youngster. You heard about Bethan getting converted when a youngster. You heard about others that got saved. You heard about Jack Spencer, getting saved at 6 years of age. As Joyce said to me one day, David said to me one day, he doesn't know what it is to have a pie and a pint. And God's hand can come upon a youngster and move in their life and speak to their hearts. And this young girl, now she could have been so bitter. She could have been so brought down to the dust of the earth. Her mother and father were probably executed in front of her. The trauma of all that we hear of in foreign lands today. The trauma of it all, and yet this young girl, we don't know what the length of time was in the time when she was captured and became a maidservant to Naaman's wife. We have no idea of that at all, but we know that she's a young girl. No man, no dad, no one to confide in, no country to link into. She's alone here by herself, and yet she's not without faith. She's without bitterness, which is a wonder, isn't it? Perhaps youngsters have an advantage over us older ones, because we can become quite cynical, can't we? We can become quite cold and distant. But this youngster, she turns and says to her mistress, "Oh, that my master would go and see the prophet in Israel, for he would heal him." There was a witness within her soul. Isn't it lovely? I wonder if she was in a home where they were conscious of Elijah or Elisha's ministry. They would talk about it. I used to love talking to Baldwin and Margaret. All popped up to see Margaret the other day, and we started to talk about some of the older things, but just formally we would talk about days. Talk to Pearl about days when others would come into her house. Martin Lloyd-Jones used to go into her house. He used to go there to visit when he'd be speaking at the top end of the valley. Baldwin and Margaret would talk of different ones who came into that. You could sit down and talk to Margaret and Winston and tell her the ones that they used to have into the house, where they would sit and listen and just discuss together what God was doing. I wonder if she came from such a house. This little girl. Oh, that my master would know that there is a prophet in Israel that can do him so much good. Her words carry weight, you know. She's only a youngster, she's only a kid. But her words carry weight. When the God's hand is upon you, your words carry weight. See? You might not seem the most influential of characters, but you make a decision for Christ and suddenly your words carry weight. And those that want to hear can be influenced by you. This is a man that's ranked in the echelons of society, that's esteemed highly by the king and the princes and the governors. They look upon him as some victorious soldier, captain, general, call him what you like. And there he is. Don't worry. She's peeking over Megan's shoulders on it. Don't worry, Beth. That's fine then. Don't worry. Her words carry weight. Naaman goes to the king. Naaman goes to the king. And he speaks to the king and tells us such and such has been said. Watch what happens in verse 5. Naaman departed and took with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, 10 changes of clothing. He thought his wealth would bring his health. And we have that discussion today, don't we? When we struggle, when the GP struggles, and when the doctor and the registrar and the senior doctors on the ward and the consultants and specialists don't seem to be getting anywhere with you. And you start talking about, well, shall I go private? And so he's taking money along because he thinks that if he takes his money along, you see, he's going to be confronted with a world that he's never met before. He's going to be confronted with someone that works a different way to the rest of the world. And the world is thinking, I'm going this way, and the prophet is saying, no, I'm going this way. And if you want to know the difference between you and the prophet is this. While you're walking straight on, he's turned a corner somewhere. And he's left you. Because he's conscious. We're just walking on, oblivious. But someone who knows the minds of God picks up with that sensitivity and moves along. This man Elisha works to different, or lives to different rules that this man was living in. And he's thinking, I'll go the way of the world, I'll fill my pockets with this, that, and the other. Jesus said this, no matter how important health is, and it is important, if our health is taken from us, we seem so frail, so broken, so shattered. We seem to have nothing for us or with us. But Jesus said this, what shall it profit a man if he gains the whole world, yet loses his own soul? You see, this is all about, initially, as we look at it, it's looking at the facade, it's looking at the outside, but God is looking to get on the inside. That's what he's looking to get in on. The leprosy is growing deeper and deeper every day. It's getting to that point where it's affecting limbs, or just a limb. But there is something that God wants to do, to use this leprosy to bring something deeper into the heart of this man. What shall it profit him if he gains the whole world? He can have all the gold of Israel if he wants, but he still can't get rid of this leprosy. He's going to die. There's no escape from it. And it's a humbling death. It's a horrible death. And we hear of these things, of some of these illnesses today. We hear of them and we draw back in horror from it, that someone would die in this way. And yet here we find Jesus speaking of a man like this. What does it really profit you if your pockets are full to the brim, yet you lose your own soul? What does it profit? We don't profit nothing, does it? Well, he gets to Elisha's house. He comes with horses and chariots and servants in great pomp and circumstance. Justly so. He's the commander of the army of the king of Israel. It would be like Mountbatten coming in former days. It would be like the different brigadier generals that have stood and headed up the military forces of the UK when they speak. The one or two that we see on the news from time to time, they bring them, they retired, and they bring them out of retirement for their comments on war situations. And they speak with authority. They speak with clarity. They seem to speak with an understanding of the men that are on the front line, how they have to cope with these things. This is a man that comes with great pomp and circumstance. When he opens his mouth, people listen. But then we see traits coming out from him. Traits that have been hidden thus far. And so we see the first trait comes out, and when he gets there, he finds that Elisha is not there meeting or waiting for him. In fact, Elisha is in the house whilst Naaman and his troop are outside. And he sends a messenger to Naaman and says, go and wash in the Jordan 7 times. And then we have some verses that tells us, verses 11 to 12. And it says that he was furious. Furious. Don't see that in verse 1 here. All is well, see. All is well. He was furious. And then we see this pride of heart. I would have thought with me coming here with my rank and position that surely Elisha would have come out and moved or smoothed his hand over the area where I was infected by this leprosy for all to see the great miracle that was going on. I assumed that would be it. We see pride of heart there, don't we? People talk of the circumstances of today, of the same-sex relationships and all these different things. If you notice, Jesus hardly ever spoke about it. Hardly ever commented on it. I don't say it's right, I'm not going down that road. This is what Ezekiel says. Ezekiel, talking about Sodom, did not harp on about the sexual disorientation. He harped on about this, pride. Isn't it funny, or isn't it strange, that the movement itself is called pride? Isn't it strange? That's what Ezekiel said was the root of the problem, pride. And here we have a man that has pride. He's furious. He has pride. Surely he's going to come out and meet me. And then when he hears, what do you mean? In the Jordan. You stick your hand 6 inches in the Jordan and it disappears. I don't mean it comes off. I don't mean that, but it disappears. The Aberbrook, we called it when we were kids, the blacker. Simply because it was going through the washery. You put your hand in there and it would disappear. And you always knew, your mother always knew when you gone into the blackhead in an inner tube to build a dam and go down the brook in an inner tube. You'd come out with a rash. You'd be coming down, floating down with a wax on either side of you. It was a filthy river. The Jordan, filthy river. Full of salts, full of nitrates, full of so many things. Not a polluted river in the sense of industry, but a dirty river. And he talks about the river Abana and the river Pharpar that surrounds Damascus. They're clear crystal waters. When we were up in the Dales just shortly now, we were walking by the side of waters that were crystal clear. Crystal clear. Even with a cloudy sky around it, it was crystal clear waters coming out of the mountains. And he said, the Jordan, you've got to be kidding. Isn't it strange how God can put his finger on the Achilles heel? How we assume things. And so we find with this, and then it says this, he went away in a rage, absolutely tamping. And so we see characteristics coming up now when the pressure's been applied. We see characteristics that are not so good there. An anger that just seems to drive within him, that demands that people meet his demands, that the world fits in the way he perceives the world should fit in. He's never come across this world before, where God is looking for just simple faith. He's not looking for a pound into the collection basket. He's not looking for you to dedicate your life. He's not looking for nothing. He's just looking for faith. And so we struggle with that today. When Peter, we heard the men cry out and said, Lord, Peter, what shall we do? Repent and be baptized, every one of you, in the name of Jesus Christ for the remission of sins, and you'll be saved. Simple as that, see? But we want to put little add-ons to it. We want to put little justifications in there that recognizes our standing in society or our standing in the church. Jesus said, you simply believe. What shall we do, Lord, to work the works of God? This is the work of God, that you believe. And so, as he's gone off in a rage, a tantrum, he's running off. Doesn't want to face this situation. His servants run after him and said, Master, if the prophet had asked you a hard thing to do, you would have been in there like a ton of bricks. It's just a simple thing he's asking you to do. How much more then should you do it? Oh, be in there like a ton of bricks. You'll be in there. If it was a fight, if there was 100 soldiers to be overcome, then you'll be in there. But no, he's just asked you to go down into the Jordan, dip yourself down 7 times, and you'll be clean. Amazingly, thankfully, the relationship is one of respect that he has with his servants or soldiers. And he stops and he thinks, are you glad for those moments when someone has said to you something and they stopped you in your tracks? You're going down there headlong to sort it all out, and someone is like, when David is there and he's going to go down to destroy Nabal, and Nabal's wife comes up through the gully, through the valley, where no one can see her, and she just stops him in her tracks. And thankfully, David was able to say, at the end of his days, I never spilt the blood of my own people. Which is an incredible thing today, thing to think of, in the sense of how many people did die by the sword. Never did an Israelite lose his life by David's hand. Which is a marvelous thing. And part of it was when a woman took time to just drop a word in front of him. Well, let's move on. Obedience is better than sacrifice. We struggle with what God wants us to do. Oh, we struggle and we fight with it. We wrestle with it. And then when you release yourself into it, when it can be something that you're convicted about and you fight it and stand up against it, and the Spirit of God will not let it go. It's there with you when you go to bed, and it's there with you when you get up in the morning. It's there with you when you put the kettle on. It's there with you when you watch your favorite program on TV, just in the background. Do that. And here he is. He goes to the river of Jordan and dips himself down 7 times. He could have been the laughing stock, couldn't he? But by now he's put that aside. He dips himself 7 times in the water and he comes up clean. Obedience is far better than sacrifice. Well, is that the end of the story? Is that the end of the story? It's not the end of the story, is it? It's just part of the story. It's a marvelous part. It's a high point in the story, but it's not the highest part. Because we read as we go through verses 15 to 16, it says, Naaman returned with his servants and stood before Elisha. So Elisha has come out now. Lovely when you come across someone that's got that perception that just staying in the house has really triggered something. That brought out the arrogance, the pride, the fury, the rage, brought out just by staying in the house. And now that's over and over. He stepped out into the arena to meet with him. And so he stands before Elijah and says, now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel. Remember what that says, because it comes up again in just a moment. Now I know in all the earth there is no other God except in Israel. Something deeper has gone on. It's not just the leprosy now. He's gone beyond that which is visible. He's now dealing with that which is on the inside. You'd have to say he's probably dealt with it. Now he believes and is aware of that God that has been watching over him all his days. You think you can hide from him? You can't. No matter what, I don't care how ugly our lives were before we were converted. No matter how ugly a life it was, he was aware. And he had not turned his back upon it. That doesn't mean he enjoyed your sin. But his patience is such that he is able to look beyond and see the outcome of what's going to go on. And this man that has been healed of leprosy knows something deeper inside, deeper than that on the hand, deeper than that on the foot, deeper than that maybe on the nose or on the forehead or on the ear. Normally the extremities, it will show itself. But something deeper. He's got skin like a baby now. And he's got a heart like what Jesus said, a child. Jesus said himself to them, unless you become like a child, you will not see the kingdom of God. That doesn't mean you're childish. He's not talking about that. He's talking about simplicity of faith. Trust. That's what he's not talking about childishness. So don't excuse your childish ways by using that text. It has nothing to do with that. It's about simplicity of faith. And so we find with this one as we come towards a close. He's found peace within his soul. Found peace within his soul. Naaman returned with his servants and stood before Elisha and said, now I know there's no God in all the earth except in Israel. Amid all the success, he was unaware of him. Amid all the nightmare that he's been through, suddenly he's aware of his goodness. He wants to give something in return. But there is a time to give, and there's a time to receive. And this was not a time for giving. You can't buy God's blessings. You can't warrant God's blessings at all. He blesses you because he blesses you. And he wants to give something. He's being genuine in his thought, but he has to be corrected. There are some things that Elisha's not going to correct him on. He leaves that for another day. But here he corrects him and turns and says to him, no, this is not a day for giving, it's a day for receiving. You're not going to give God anything that will warrant the healing that he's given you. You need to understand that God simply loves you. He loves you not because you're wealthy, not because you're nice, not because you're highly esteemed. He loves you because he loves you. That's the simple reason why. And now he asks two other questions. Remember what he said now. I know that there in all the earth there is no God except in Israel. Watch what he said. When I go back to my homeland, can I take 2 mule loads of earth from the land? For when I bow down, I might pray. He doesn't understand that this God can hear him anywhere he is. The subject, that the little thing that the children made, that whale, he can hear you in the depths of the sea. He can hear you on the crest of waves, as Peter is singing. But he can hear you down in the depths of the sea as well. He says, this God that is in Israel will only hear me if I am in Israel. I'm going to my homeland. Can I take 2 mule loads of earth that I might be able to pray in my own land? Notice what Elijah does. We're so quick to correct people sometimes, aren't we? We've got to get it spot on. Got to get it right. If you don't get it right from the beginning, notice Elisha ignores it. absolutely ignores it. There's time to correct and there's time just for simple faith to work its way through the system. If he's going to be someone that's going to pray, he'll find out one day that you don't need soil from, whatever street it is, there in Joppa or there in Galilee or there in Jerusalem. You don't need soil there to pray on. You can kneel down anywhere and he'll meet with you. And then he says, when my master goes into the temple of the god Rimmon, when he takes my hand, the king is getting doddily on his feet. That's what is happening. And so he takes his hand, that when he bows down, he doesn't fall over. And so this man, Naaman, has to bow down with him. That's how close a man he is. Look, he's his right-hand man. And he says, when I go in there, may the Lord pardon me when I bow down to him. Notice, he didn't correct him. Didn't correct him at all. I thank God for the day when David never had a crack at me when I continued to drink. When on one Sunday morning I went into work after sinking almost half a bottle of Southern Comfort the night before. Me and Judith had argued. You said he'd done that when he was a Christian. Yes, I'm sorry to say I did. And the temper that was there, and I sent my own half a bottle. I could hardly move the next morning because my stomach was so upset. He just said to me, Mark, you'll learn one day. He never took me to task about it at all. You'll learn one day. If you're seeking God, he'll bring you through. And there's time to correct and there's time not to correct. There's time for the individual to learn. Simple faith works through the system. So we find with this, 3 questions were asked. Can I give something? No, there's no need to do that. You can't buy God's blessing. Well, can I take some soil then from Canaan that when I go into my homeland I can pray? Well, you don't really need to do that for the sincerity of faith's sake. Here's a man that wants to find out God and he just lets it go. What about when I go into the temple of the god Rimmon? I don't want to go in there myself, but my master will ask me to lead him and to be with him. And he says, may the Lord pardon me. Watch what he says. Elisha turns and says to him, go in peace. That tells you that the man was at peace with God. It doesn't mean that Elisha is saying, you've got a completely wrong mate, and you just go on your way. He gives him peace. There's a time to correct, and there's a time to let it go for that individual to learn. Paul was so confident of the Galatians with all the feelings that they had towards him. He says, God will reveal this to you in the end. Confident of it. Confident with the Corinthians that it will happen to be so. With all the thoughts that they had concerning, God will lead you into what's right. There's times when we've got just to let it go. And so we have this lovely, lovely story of this man named. All started when a problem came, and the problem was answered by a young girl whose witness had its impact upon this powerful individual in the land. You and me can affect people for good by being that witness in this world that we live in today. May God grant it to be so, that the day will come when those that we are with, we can turn and say to them, go in peace. May God grant it to be so. Well, just one announcement.